What's going on, everybody? I'm here today, obviously inside the shop. It's about 10 below out right now. I was going to do some fishing, but the wind and the cold, super high pressure, I decided to do a few other things around here, and I thought to myself, I should put together a little tips video. I was actually cleaning the truck out and I found this tip up that fell out of the bucket and was left outside overnight, and that kind of prompted an idea here. So we're going to start with this tip up right here. Tip number one: when you're done fishing your tip ups, bring them inside and let them thaw out, because this tip up just spent however many hours with this spool from here down submerged in the water. No matter what kind of line you have, it's going to pick up some water. Problem is, if you leave those stuck in the back of the truck, they're going to freeze up. You can see that fluorocarbon is going to pull off there, but as soon as I get into that braided line, that line is frozen on there. It's just basically a solid brick of ice. So if you're one of those guys that likes to get done tip up fishing, spool your tip up, throw them in the truck, and then leave them out in the cold till the next time you use them, it's going to cause you issues. So bring those tip ups in, let them thaw out, so that the next time you go, that tip up isn't frozen like a solid brick of ice. So there you go, tip number one. That's going to take us into tip number two. After you've taken your tip ups in and you let them thaw out, re-spool them. If you're out on the ice and it's a cold day, anything below 10-15 degrees like we had the last time I was out fishing, you catch a fish and you start throwing that line out on the ice and into the snow, and it starts to freeze almost immediately. And it makes it virtually impossible to spool it back onto that spool nice and tight. So what you end up with is a big frozen spool of loosely spooled line. This one I actually brought in and thawed out, and you can see that that line is just spooled loose on there, because once all that ice and water melted and dried off of there, now I've got a big loose spool. If I don't re-spool this and I just go back out and try to use this again, it's going to create issues. It's basically, if you think of it as like a backlash, on a spinning reel. I'm sorry, on a bait casting reel. I mean, you can see I'm already got some issues because of how loosely wrapped this is, just trying to get this hook off of here. So now if I go back out onto the ice and I try to set this up, as that spools off and those loops, they start to get caught on things like that. It's getting caught. So what I need to do is, see, I'm kind of creating my own issues by going too fast here, but what I want to do is, get this line pulled off of here, because I caught a couple fish on this tip up, and like you could see in that little clip there, it's spooled back on, all frozen up. So what I want to do is get this spool unspooled here. So I've got all my loose line pulled off of there, just kind of laid on the floor here at my feet so that it's not going to get tangled up, and I just spool these back up. This process only takes, if you're doing 2 or 3 tip ups, it's only going to take you 5 to 10 minutes, but it's going to prevent you from having problems when you get out on the ice and your hands are cold and things don't want to work. So save yourself some time and some aggravation, and go from a big rat's nest to a nice tight spool. So next time you go out fishing, that's going to come off there nice. You're not going to have any issues. If you get a bite on that, that's going to come off nice and smooth. Fish aren't going to feel it. You're going to be in a winning position. So re-spool your tip ups. That's going to bring us into tip number 3. See, a lot of guys, when they set their tip ups, all they're concerned with is the depth at which their bait is running. Hey, do I need to be 18 inches off the bottom, 3 feet off the bottom, whatever. And that's important, but it's also important that when you set this tip up, these buckets are representing the ice, obviously. This part, the bottom part of your spool here, would be under the water. It's incredibly important that this spool, or this shaft, is as straight up and down as possible, so that that spool is level under the water. I see a lot of guys, what they'll do, they'll set their tip up, but it'll be off center like this. Now, the problem that this creates is that this little eye, being heavy, wants to rotate down to the lowest part. So now if a fish comes and swims away from it in an odd direction, other than that, other than straight up and down, it creates tension. And this spool doesn't spin. If your T is straight up and down, as the line spins around or a fish pulls, that spool is going to follow it in any direction. If you're off center or off kilter like this, as a fish pulls, that T won't spin as easily. And you're going to have problems, and it's harder for it to spin uphill, and you're going to have tension. And that tension, the fish feel, and they let go of your bait. So it's imperative that when you set that T be straight up and down. Having that T straight up and down is going to be super helpful as far as fish not feeling the line, not feeling the tension, and holding onto that bait longer so you can get over there and set that hook. So tip number 3, make sure when you set these tip ups, that spool is level and perfectly straight up and down. All right, tip number 4, setting this flag. This one may seem kind of ridiculous, but I see it happen all the time when I'm fishing with guys that aren't really well versed in tip ups, and they're not taking into account how they're setting this flag. Obviously there's different little notches in here. Some are going to be more difficult, harder or softer as far as the amount of tension it's going to take to set that flag up. I normally just decide based on what size of minnow I'm running. But one thing I see a lot of guys doing is setting their flag so that that T is in the corner of this part here. So tip number 4, be mindful of where on that loop you're setting that T. It needs to be somewhere near the middle. If it's towards either end or either corner, you have the potential of that T getting stuck on the loop, fish feeling the tension, dropping your bait. So, little bonus tip for you here. I call it wind setting a tip up. That's when you feed the main flag over the top of the T and then set the tip up. Still allows for that flag to go up. But what it does is it doesn't allow the wind, no matter which direction it's blowing from, to set your flag off. I'll also use this because it creates a little bit more tension if I'm fishing really big minnows and my minnows setting my flag off. I'll use this wind set or big minnow set to keep those minnows from pulling my bait off. Here, I'll give you a closer look. Again, all you're doing is taking that main post, feeding it over the top, and then setting your flag this way so that your bottom loop and your main flag post are on opposite sides of your T. That way the wind can't take that or set it up. All right, well that's going to do it for my tip-up tips for the day. I hope you found one of these useful. If not, sorry. If you did, I appreciate a like. Thanks for watching.